Arceon is my absolute favorite plugin for building, and I want to teach you how to use it. You will need to become a patron to Arcaniax to get access to this plugin. I'll provide a link to his Patreon in the description. Once you have it ready on your server, we can start. This is the second video in my Arceon series, and we'll be covering the commands road, arch, rope, and roof. I'll also provide a link to the wiki if you want to reference the commands for yourself. The first command I'm going to be showing you is the road tool, and I do have this basic terrain set up to demonstrate some of these commands. We're going to do a road on top of those in a second, but first I'll just demonstrate out here. To use the road tool, we're going to have to use the convex selection, so make sure you're typing that out. Select convex to start. And then we're going to select the points that we want our road to follow, so I'll just do a super basic one along some flat terrain like this. Then we'll enter the command road, and whatever block you want to use, I'm going to use a dirt path, and then we'll make the width 5, so that's the width of the whole road, and go ahead and enter that, and you'll see it makes a beautiful road for us. And this one's easy because it's all flat, but there's also some variations to it that we can do. Let me undo that and start again. This time we'll add some elevation to our selection points, so it's not all flat. And let's go ahead and enter that same command we just did and see what it does. It's going to create an automatic height for us on this road, so 4 blocks high all the way up. You can also adjust that manually by adding an extra number on the end. So if I wanted it to be 5 blocks wide and 10 blocks tall, let's say, I can enter that in, and you'll get something like that. There's also a couple flags we can add to this to add some noise or to stack the whole shape down. First, let me show you the -D flag. If we have nothing here, it works with anything. Well, let's change it up a bit just for fun, and we'll make this a 10 wide road. And we don't need to put a height. Instead, we're just going to do -D, and it's going to stack the whole thing all the way down till it finds ground level, just like that. From the top, you'll see the shape that this has made. If we want the road to be a little more random and less smooth as it curves around, we can add the -N or the noise flag to this. So let me undo that and do -N instead, and you'll see it slightly changes how those curves go. It makes them less smooth and more angular, but it's also random, so however many times I enter this, it's going to change it and be different each time. Let's do a little something with this terrain I have set up because it does look better and more practical to do it on an actual example. I'm going to start from down here and just work my way up the mountain wherever I want this road to appear. It doesn't matter if there's a big gap or if it's going to cut into the terrain, because there's other commands that you can use to fix those up and clean it up. This time I'm going to be using a slab block because it does look really nice and smooth it off with the slabs if you wanted that type of road. And I'll make the width of it 4 blocks. And I'm not going to run any flags yet. First, I want to see what this is doing. That doesn't look terrible. All the grass on top, we're just going to have to remove that ourselves. But yeah, it looks like we can stack it down just to get this, or we could add more height to it. Either way, both ways work in this case. But let's go ahead and use the -D flag, and that will stack any parts that were open all the way down to the ground. If you want a tip for how to remove the grass on top of the road, I do have a tip I can show you. It's a Voxelsniper command. It's not from Arceon, so it's a completely separate plugin. But I did want to show you this in case you wanted to be able to remove that dirt more easily. First thing I'm going to do is make a G mask that excludes whatever my road block is. So !oak slab, that will be ignoring oak slabs for everything we do. Then using an arrow, I'm going to enter the command VE melt, and we'll change that brush size to something small like 4. And then we should be able to go on top of this without ruining the road shape we have. It's just affecting the grass around it. And we can just go up and around and shape up that grass around the road and just clean it up like that. Very nice. Next, I'm going to show you the arch tool, and I'm going to use it to build a little bridge across this ravine. With the arch tool, you can use either the convex or cuboid selection. If you wanted a straight arch, you would use select cuboid. If you wanted a more curving arch, kind of like a road, then you'd use a convex selection. First, I'll demonstrate using cuboid. So we've got point A over there, and we'll make point B up here. So it's going to make a straight line from there to there using the arch. Now let's enter the command arch, insert whatever random block you want to use, and let's change the width of this to 5 to match our road that we have laid out. And then the rest of the numbers that we can add to this are optional. You could just enter it like this. And in fact, let's do that and just see what it does. If you don't enter all the extra numbers, let's see what it does with this. So with that, I need to turn off my Gmask and load some things in. Okay, so with that, you've just got a single arch connecting up there. So that's good for a very simple bridge. It doesn't look too bad. But there are a few other things we can add to it. Let's enter the command again, and this time we'll be filling in all of the different parameters just so you can see. And let's do arch, pick a block type to go here, and then the width, we'll make it 5. For height, this will be the full height from the top of the arch to the very bottom of the arch, the tallest point. We'll just make that 10 for now. And pillar size is the width of the pillars in between the arch, I think. Let's enter 5 for that. Amount is how many arches will there be. So we'll do 3 arches, the default was 1. And arch height is the percentage of the height of each arch. So it's from 1% to 100%. We're going to do 50 for 50%. That should give us a nice semicircle of an arch. And we'll enter that command and see what that does. And you can see it does get cut off a little bit from that mountain, but I mean, that's just because of the weird angle I'm doing this. I'm kind of connecting it way up here, but it does give us 3 perfect arches. I want to do this again using a convex selection because I think it's more interesting to see how powerful this really is and how it can navigate all of the different curvatures in a convex selection, even if you have it go up and down like this. Let's run the same command using this selection and see what happens. When you add more height to the arch, you'll see that the height of each of these is changing slightly. It's compensating for all of the extra elevation, but it does still make them pretty evenly. Now there are a couple flags for this that we can use, the -L flag and the -D flag. -D does the same as it did for roads, so let's do that. We'll have the same command and we'll do -D, and that will stack all of the pillars straight down, and this does help you see a lot better those arches, and you might want to do that honestly for most times you use this, and it does help you see the angle of each arch. Actually, I want to change this up because I don't like how that's looking. Instead of 3 amount, we'll do 4, and instead of 50%, I'm going to do 80% for the amount, and just see what that does. That gives us much taller, narrower arches. Of course, there are more of them, and right here where it gets cut off, you could just manually fill that in if you felt the need to, but I don't think it looks terrible as it is right now either. Anyway, that's the -D flag. -L will level off the height of the arches. Let's enter that and see what changes. What it did is now all of the arches are the exact same height, and then the top part will continue to slope up, but whatever the first arch is, the rest of the arches will stay at that height. Not super aesthetically pleasing, unless you really want to go for it. Of course, it would look better if you had both L and D as flags, then it would connect to the ground like this. I guess you'd use the level command if you didn't want your arches having different angles of an arch, because when you just do it without it, some are steeper than others and they change based on the elevation of your convex selection. I wish I had experimented with this sooner because I myself have struggled building an arch bridge in the past and I didn't even try this command. Now I'm kicking myself for not doing that. Oh well, we live and learn. The next command I'm going to show you is another way to do simple bridges or ropes across a ravine type of thing like this. We're going to make a very simple rope bridge, going from here to here. And this one, you have to use the cuboid selection because you only need to have 2 points for it to work. Let's select our first point for this, and let's go over here to select our second point. Actually, I want my second point to be a little bit further this way. You can ignore the big box it's making and just look at point A and point B. That's where it's going to connect and build the rope. Command for this is very simple, rope, and then a block type. I don't know what to use. I'll use lapis. And then there are a couple extra numbers we can add, but let's just start with this, and you can see what it does. It has connected point A to point B on a diagonal, and it's created a steady rope for us. Now there's a couple extra numbers we can add to this command to change it completely. We can add extra length percentage and width. First, let me show you when we do the command rope. We'll do lapis, and let's change the extra length percentage. We'll change it to 20, so 20% of extra length is added to it, and you'll see that that goes way too low and it goes into the ground. So to avoid doing this, we just use a lesser percent of, say, 10, and you can keep adjusting that until you get a height that you want. It really is kind of like height. You could treat it like height, but it's really length of the rope. So the longer it is, the steeper it will go. If you didn't want to go very steep at all, you could even go to 2, and it barely bends at all at that point. You can kind of reverse the rope effect by making it 0, but I don't see the point in doing that when you could just do a road. So let's keep it at 5% for now. I think that looks good. And if you wanted to add some width to this like you would on a road or arch, you're going to add a third number. We'll make it 5 so that it has a width and it actually looks more like a bridge that you could walk across now. And if we did want to add a railing to this, then we're just going to select either edge of this road that we've created. I guess you could also select it 1 block higher so that it kind of lines up like a railing would and it wouldn't be perfectly same level as the rest of it. And we'll do the command rope. This time we'll do an oak fence. It's going to be a super ugly build, but I don't care. Then we need the extra length. Let's try 5% again, and then we don't want any width. We just want that. All right, that looks pretty good. And then I can do the same thing on the other side. Make sure it's 1 block above the road part. I'll put this one here as well. Run that same command. The only issue we're having now is that the fences aren't connecting, and there's another Arceon command to fix that. It's the fix connections command. You just have to make sure that all of it is selected in a cuboid selection, and then you can run the command fix connections or fix connect, and it will fix those right up. And you can see over here that this one is a little bit messed up and we didn't get it quite right, but it's super easy to undo what we did and reselect it and try again. It's certainly a lot faster to enter a few commands than having to go in there and manually fix it by hand. The next command I'm going to show you is the roof tool if you want to build out a roof without having to stack it manually or measure everything. I've actually never used the roof tool myself in building, but maybe I should because I have seen how useful it can be. I have walls already set up that I'm going to use for this example, but it's not required that you have walls already built. You can add those after you've done the roof shape, and I'll show that off too in a moment, but this will be easier just for demonstration. So using a cuboid selection, first I'm going to try to find the center of this. I think I did not measure this, but we'll just say that's the center, and find the center of that. So I'm finding this one whole section of the building, and then I'm going to enter a roof command, and it will, basically make a roof from point A to point B. You just want to make sure it's in the center of whatever it is, whatever wall section you're doing, if you have the walls already built. And I'm going to enter the command roof. Let's do a block of emerald because it's easier to see. And then we'll make the width of it needs to be able to cover the width of the walls. I'm not exactly sure how wide these walls are. Let's just start with 20 just to see how big that is. And let's go ahead and run that command. Oh wow, that was the perfect width for these walls. But you see it doesn't overhang at all, so if we did want it to overhang just a little bit, we could do 21 or 22, and that would overhang the edges by 1 block each. So that looks really nice. And this is the default slope of a roof that it will create, but there are other things that we can do to it. We can also change the height of the roof. So if I undo that and have the width as 22, if we want the height to be 10, then it will create a much steeper roof like that. I need it to be a little less steep though for the next example, so we'll go to something like this. It also works on a diagonal, also with the cuboid selection. So we can find the center of this diagonal and we'll enter the same command. I don't know if this is going to be wide enough. Nope, it's not going to be wide enough. We'll make it a little bit wider. We'll make it 28. And that's almost wide enough. Let's try again and make it 30. And I'm also going to make it a little steeper. We'll make it 14. Super basic roof. There are some spots in it that could be smoothed off a little nicer, but that still does a lot of the work for you. When you are making a selection, make sure it's not on different heights like this. This is just going to create a roof from point A to point B. It's going to make the roof completely angled. So unless your building needs an angled roof, don't do that. If I run this command to angle this roof, it doesn't quite fit. Doesn't quite look right. I mean, it could look right, but not quite. Let's try that again on the correct level. Perfect. You can also use the roof command on a curvature using the convex selection. So let me get this ready, and I'm going to select all of these gold dots that I've previously placed, and these are all the same level, so we don't have any issues of height variation. And then we're going to do roof 133. Let's make the width of it 10, and let's make the height also 10, and see what we get. We get a nice curved roof going around that way. It also looks pretty steep, but kind of cool. There are a few flags we can use with this command. Some of them are similar to others from other commands. But let's start with the -D flag. You should already guess what this one does. It will stack it down to the ground. And this is what you could do instead of building walls yourself, especially if you have a curving roof. This is very handy for just building out those walls for you. The only problem is now the roof doesn't overhang the walls. So if you really quickly wanted to add an overhang to these custom curved walls, then we'll take that same command, we'll remove the flag, we'll add extra width to this, and there you get an overhanging roof. And you could also change the pattern of it. So if I did it in a different block, then you can see it better. Then it would do something like that. The next flag is the noise flag, and it will change how smooth these curves are. So if I undo that last thing, and we're going to keep that emerald under there just for example, but if I just add -N to this, you'll see how it changes the curve of our roof, and every time we enter it, it's going to change it to be a little bit different each time, just adding some noise to those curves and making them less even. This flag will also work if using the cuboid selection in only 2 points. You can get some interesting zigzagging shapes that way. The last flag we can do is -B for bevel. And here you can see the edges of our roof are now slanted or sloped or beveled. Let me show you that again. So without the bevel, it's just a straight edge. And then with the bevel, we've got an angled edge. And of course, like all flags, you can stack them and do as many of them as you want in a single go. This is actually super fun to experiment with. I'm actually really enjoying this. I'm gonna have to use this from now on to map out my buildings. It does make it a lot easier for sure. I hope you were able to learn something from watching this video. I knew about a lot of these commands, but haven't really put them into practice or tried them out myself, so I really need to do that in the future, now that I see how useful they can be. Be on the lookout for other Arceon tutorials, as well as other building tutorials on my channel. check them all out if you haven't, and have fun building!